The sun bled orange across the rolling hills of Willow Creek Valley as Ethan Caldwell's battered pickup rattled down the gravel road, dust pluming behind him like a ghost chasing its own shadow. And in the passenger seat lay the deed to Blackthorn Farm, 40 acres of fertile earth, a crumbling Victorian farmhouse, and a promise of escape from the city that had chewed him up and spat him out at 32 with nothing but student debt, a broken engagement, and a resume that read like a suicide note. He had bought the place sight unseen off a foreclosure auction for pennies on the dollar, the realtor's voice crackling over the phone with warnings about eccentric previous owners and unusual livestock. But Ethan didn't care. He wanted silence, soil under his nails, and a sky so wide it could swallow his mistakes. So when the farmhouse finally loomed into view, 3 stories of peeling sage-green paint, wraparound porch sagging like a tired smile, and windows that winked in the dying light. He felt a jolt of something dangerously close to hope, killed the engine, stepped out into the crisp October air, thick with the scent of hay and distant wood smoke, and that's when he heard it, a low rhythmic thudding. Not the wind, not a tractor, but something heavier, deliberate, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. He squinted toward the barn, a hulking red structure half swallowed by ivy, its doors yawning open, and from the darkness emerged 3 figures. No, not figures, silhouettes that dwarfed the doorframe, each step shaking the ground beneath his boots, and as they stepped into the light, Ethan's breath caught in his throat because they were women, unmistakably impossibly tall, 10 feet, maybe 12, their bodies sculpted like goddesses carved from marble and myth, skin glowing bronze and ivory and obsidian under the sunset, hair cascading in rivers of gold, raven and fire in their eyes, dear God. Their eyes burned with a hunger that made his knees buckle. The first, the golden-haired one, wore a sundress the color of ripe wheat stretched taut across breasts like rising moons, her bare feet sinking into the earth as if it welcomed her weight, and she smiled with lips that could swallow his soul. The second, dark-skinned and regal, had braids coiled like serpents down her back, a leather vest and denim shorts barely containing thighs thick as oak trunks, and she carried a pitchfork like a scepter. The third, flame-haired and freckled, lounged against the barn door in a plaid shirt knotted beneath her chest, her hips swaying with a promise that made Ethan's pulse stutter. And before he could stammer a greeting or bolt back to his truck, the golden one spoke, her voice a velvet thunder that rolled through his bones. "You're late, Ethan Caldwell. We've been waiting." He froze, the deed crumpling in his fist. Because how did she know his name? And the dark-skinned woman laughed, a sound like midnight thunder, stepping closer until her shadow swallowed him whole, and she said, "The farm chose you, but you don't own us. We own the land, and now we own you." Ethan's mouth went dry, his mind racing for explanations. Squatters, performance artists, some elaborate prank. But the redhead pushed off the barn, sauntering forward with a grin that bared teeth too sharp for comfort. And she purred, "Don't look so scared, little man. We're not going to hurt you much." And then, in perfect unison, their voices braided together like a spell, "You're going to have sex with us." The words hit him like a freight train, explicit, unapologetic, and utterly insane. And yet his body betrayed him, heat flooding south as terror and desire collided in his chest. He took a step back, boots crunching on gravel, and stammered, "What the hell is this?" "Who are you people?" The golden one, who introduced herself as Lysandra, tilted her head, her dress slipping off one shoulder to reveal a collarbone that could launch 1,000 ships. And she said, "We are the daughters of the soil, bound to Blackthorn since before your kind learned to write, and every century a man comes, buys the deed, thinks he's king, and we remind him who truly rules, the dark-skinned woman." Calling herself Nyx, twirled the pitchfork lazily, the metal glinting like a threat, and added, "The farm needs seed." Ethan, not just crops, blood, pleasure, life. The redhead Ember licked her lips and whispered, "And you're going to give it to us. Willing or not?" Ethan's heart hammered so loud he was sure they could hear it. And he raised his hands, palms out, trying to buy time. "Look, I don't know what kind of cult this is, but I paid for this land fair and square, and I'm calling the cops." Nix's laughter boomed again, and she planted the pitchfork in the ground, the earth splitting around it like it obeyed her. And she said, "Call whoever you want, little king. No signal out here, no roads out after dark. The farm doesn't let go of what it wants." Ethan fumbled for his phone, thumbed the screen, and sure enough, no bars. Just a blinking SOS that mocked him, and as the sun dipped below the hills, the air grew thick, electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Lysandra stepped closer, her bare feet leaving imprints deep enough to plant saplings, and she reached out, one massive hand cupping his jaw with a gentleness that belied her size, her thumb brushing his lower lip. And she murmured, "You feel it, don't you? The pull, the land sings to you. We sing to you." And God help him, he did feel it, a low thrum in his blood, a heat pooling in his gut, his traitorous body leaning into her touch, even as his mind screamed to run. Ember circled behind him, her breath hot on his neck, fingers trailing down his spine through his flannel shirt, and she whispered, "The first time is always the hardest, but you'll beg for the second." Nix watched with hooded eyes, her vest creaking as she breathed, and she said, "The contract isn't on paper, Ethan. It's in your seed. Spill it, and the farm blooms. Refuse, and the farm takes it anyway." He jerked away from Lysandra's hand, spinning to face Ember, then Nix, trapped in a triangle of towering, impossible women, and shouted, "This is insane! You can't just, kidnap me into some fertility ritual?" Lysandra's smile softened, almost tender, and she said, "No one's kidnapping you. You walked in. The door only opens one way." Ethan's gaze darted to the truck, 20 feet away, keys still in the ignition. And he bolted, legs pumping, lungs burning. But before he'd gone 3 steps, the ground rippled like water, roots snaking up from the soil to coil around his ankles, yanking him face first into the dirt. He thrashed, spitting grit, and looked up to see Ember, crouching, her face inches from his, eyes glowing like embers in a fire, and she said, "Naughty boys get tied up. Be good and we'll untie you after." The roots tightened, not painful but firm, dragging him back toward the farmhouse, and the women walked alongside, their footsteps shaking the earth, chatting casually as if hauling a man to his fate was Tuesday chores. Lysandra mused, "He's prettier than the last one. Remember Elias? All beard and no stamina," Nix snorted. "Stamina's overrated if you know what you're doing." Ember giggled. "Give me 3 minutes and he'll forget his own name." Ethan's face burned with humiliation and a darker, shameful thrill, and he yelled, "Let me go, you psychopaths." But his voice cracked, betraying the tremor of arousal he couldn't suppress. They reached the porch, the roots releasing him only to be replaced by Nix's iron grip on his arm, lifting him like a doll, and she carried him through the front door into a foyer lit by flickering oil lamps, the air heavy with lavender and musk, the wallpaper peeling to reveal murals beneath, painted scenes of women entwined with vines, men on their knees, faces rapturous. Lysandra locked the door behind them, the click echoing like a judge's gavel, and she said, "Welcome home, Ethan. Strip." He blinked, clutching his shirt, and sputtered, "Excuse me?" Ember rolled her eyes, grabbed the hem of his flannel, and ripped it open, buttons pinging across the hardwood like gunfire, exposing his chest to the warm air, and she cooed, "Modesty's cute, but we've seen it all. Bigger, smaller. None as pretty as you." Nix tossed him onto a velvet chaise lounge that looked antique and suspiciously sturdy, and she knelt, her knees bracketing his hips without touching, her weight making the floorboards groan, and she said, "Rule 1, you don't leave until the triad is complete. 1 night with each of us. 1 seed for each daughter. Then you're free to farm, to live, to leave if you still want to." Ethan's mind reeled, trying to process the absurdity, the threat, the promise, and he latched onto the loophole. "And if I say no?" Lysandra's smile turned sharp, and she said, "The land takes what it needs. Through pleasure or pain. Your choice. Ember leaned in, her lips brushing his ear, and whispered, "But pain's no fun for anyone. Let us make you feel good, Ethan. Let us make you a god for a night." His body was a traitor, cock straining against his jeans as her breath ghosted his skin. And he hated himself for it, hated the way his hips twitched involuntarily. Nix's fingers traced the bulge, not grabbing, just mapping, and she hummed, "He's eager. Good soil." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, trying to summon images of his ex-fiancée, of police reports, of anything to anchor him. But all he could feel was the heat of them, the scent of them, the impossible reality of 3 giantesses who claimed ownership of his body and soul. Lysandra clapped her hands, breaking the spell, and said, "Enough teasing. He's had a long drive. Let's feed him first. A king needs strength." They hauled him to the kitchen, a cavernous room with a cast-iron stove and a table long enough for banquets. And Ember shoved him into a chair while Nix ladled stew from a pot that smelled of rosemary and sin. The portions massive, meant for their size, but they served him a normal bowl, watching with amusement as he ate mechanically, his stomach knotting even as the food warmed him. Conversation flowed around him, surreal and domestic. Lysandra talking about the apple orchard needing pruning, Nix complaining about foxes in the henhouse, Ember teasing that she'd caught a drone flying overhead last week and accidentally swatted it into the pond. And Ethan realized with a chill that they weren't lying about being here a long time. Their knowledge of the land intimate, ancient. When the bowl was empty, Lysandra stood, towering over him, and said, "Time for the first rite. My sisters will prepare you. I'll be in the solarium." She left, her footsteps fading up the stairs, and Nix and Ember exchanged a look that made Ethan's blood run cold. Ember grabbed his wrist, pulling him to his feet, and said, "Bath time, little king. You smell like fear and diesel." They marched him up a staircase that creaked under their weight, but not his, down a hallway lined with doors that glowed with candlelight, into a bathroom the size of his old apartment, a clawfoot tub already steaming, filled with water that shimmered with rose petals and something metallic. Nix stripped him with efficient tugs, jeans pooling at his ankles, boxers following, and he stood naked, shivering despite the heat, cock half-hard and mortifyingly obvious, and Ember whistled, "Look at that. The land chose well." They lifted him into the tub like he weighed nothing, Nix's hands scrubbing his back with a sponge the size of a dinner plate, Ember washing his hair with fingers that massaged his scalp until he moaned involuntarily. And he hated how good it felt, how cared for, how seduced. The water turned cloudy with dirt and tension, and when they toweled him dry with sheets that could double as sails, his skin tingled, every nerve awake, and Nix whispered, "You're ready. Don't fight it. The more you give, the less it takes." They dressed him in a robe of midnight silk that hung to his knees, absurdly luxurious, and led him barefoot through the house to a glass-walled solarium where moonlight poured in, vines climbing the panes, and Lysandra waited naked now, her body a landscape of curves and power, breasts heavy, hips wide, thighs that could crush him, and he'd thank her. And she beckoned with one finger, her voice a siren's call. "Come, Ethan. The first seed is mine." His feet moved before his brain caught up, the robe slipping from his shoulders, and as he crossed the threshold, the door sealed behind him with a hiss of vines, and he knew, with a clarity that terrified and thrilled him, that there was no turning back. The chapter ended with him standing before her, dwarfed, erect, trembling, as Lysandra smiled and said, "Kneel, my king. Let me show you what paradise costs."